Hey guys, Lewis here, and in this video I want to talk about how to become a Python developer. So this is going to be sort of a roadmap if you're not a programmer, if you want to get into technology specifically as a Python programmer, and these are like the steps that you're going to follow. So I've been a Python developer myself since 2017, so it's been a few years. Obviously, it's not the only programming language that I use, and you'll find that, for most programmers, they use multiple programming languages. In my case, I have used, PHP in the past, I've used Java, but currently I use Python for the back-end side of things and JavaScript for the front-end side of things. So I'm a full-stack Python and JavaScript developer. And I realized that especially in the United States and in some parts of Europe, being a Python developer can be pretty lucrative, which is pretty attractive for a lot of people. And even if you start at a fairly low, maybe 40K, then the earning potential is actually pretty high because it's a very sort of in-demand skill, and there's not enough people who know about Python development. So the starting salary here, the base salary, the average base salary for a junior Python developer is going to be 68K. Now I can tell you that honestly, so this is based on 72 salaries in the US, but it's really going to depend on the company that you're going to be working at. And I'm assuming that a lot of these salaries that were reported, and this is in Indeed.com, a lot of these salaries are from probably people who have maybe a few years of experience and they're still considered junior, or they have some sort of like a bachelor's degree in computer science or a master's degree in computer science. So if you're already like a working adult and looking to make a career like change, get into tech and become a Python developer, you should probably expect a little bit less than that, unless you get into a company that, is like a big company or something like that. But for most people, I would say, at least 40K or 50K, depends on your location as well. But this is more on the high side, I would say. Again, depends on your skills, depends on your university education, depends on the company. But this is on the high side. What I would get more excited about is the earning potential, because once you have a few years of experience as a Python developer, you have a lot of opportunities that are open to you with pretty high earning potential. So generally speaking, software development is not just for Python. It's a pretty good field for remote work. If you take a look at the remote work statistics, and this is not exactly like I don't know how reliable this website is, but it says that in the top fields for remote work, it's essentially coming first is computer and IT. And again, I don't know what this is based on, but I would say in my experience this is pretty accurate. I mean, software development, you don't really need to go to an office to do software development. You could do it at home. And so you can get a junior Python developer job or a Python developer job working remotely, working from home. And so for a lot of people, including myself, this is pretty attractive. So the question that a lot of you guys have is, like, if you don't have a college education in computer science, can you actually teach yourself computer programming? Can you actually teach yourself Python programming up to the point where you can become at least a junior Python developer and get into the industry? The answer is definitely yes. I've seen that happen. There is a guy at my company who just got, in this year, he got a job as a junior developer. He did not have any, college education in computer science. I think his degree was like in physics or chemistry or both. And he got a job as a developer just because he did some training on his own for, I believe it was 6 months. And so this is not to say that it is easy. It's not easy. You're going to have to prove that you've been able to teach yourself and that you can do things. And approximately, I think if you put in a good amount of time every week, this should take about 6 months. Again, depends on the time that you invest every week, but just to give you sort of a timeline. You could go to college and get a bachelor's degree in computer science. but it takes a long time. It's very expensive, especially for people in the US, and it's totally non-necessary. Like some companies look at it. A lot of companies look at that if you have a degree in computer science, but there's so much demand for those types of jobs that you don't need to have a degree in computer science. Companies will give you a shot. All right, so now I just want to talk about why Python is a good choice for beginners, people trying to get into the tech industry. Should you consider Python, or should you consider other programming languages, other fields? I think Python is a pretty good choice in general because there are many job opportunities. So in fact, I have this page here on Indeed, Python developer, and this is remote. In the US, you have more than 3,000 jobs. So, that's a lot of opportunities here. And, Python in general is very, very popular. So if you get stuck on some, programming problem, you're always going to find answers on the internet. And this is very, very important because I can tell you from my experience, having worked with more niche technologies, when you're working with those more niche things and it's hard to find answers on the internet, well, that's a pretty big problem, because unless you have someone next to you who's more experienced, then it's a big problem. And even if you have someone who's more experienced next to you, you don't want to be asking questions like every 5 minutes. So it's hugely popular, and not only is it a good thing in terms of like finding answers online, but it's also a good thing in terms of just getting jobs. So I wanted to go on this page here, but apparently it doesn't exist anymore. There you go. So it's the Berkeley Extension School saying the 11 most in-demand programming languages. First one is JavaScript, no surprise, but as a Python developer, you're probably going to have to learn JavaScript as well. Like my job as a Python developer includes quite a bit of JavaScript code. Depends on the job, but for most full stack developer, that's going to be the case. Python comes in, at second, and really, there are multiple reasons why Python is the second most popular programming language. One of the reasons is that it's easy to learn. It doesn't have like the weird, quirks like JavaScript or certainly PHP. It's also very versatile. So, you can actually code a lot of things using Python. For example, the framework I personally work with at my company, it's Odoo. It's not a very well-known framework. For most Python developers, they're going to work with like Django, Flask, or Fast API. Odoo is a more niche thing, but it's written using Python. It's just like it's pretty standard, Python framework. That's the one I work with, and this is for web applications, building business-facing sort of web applications, things like, accounting, sales, point of sale, project management, that kind of stuff. Then with Python, you can also go into, data science or machine learning, any kind of like statistics type of thing, and artificial intelligence. For example, using Jupyter notebooks. They use Python. You can do that as well. And you can also do like game development with Python. So there's this framework here, Pygame. You're not going to make like super elaborate games, but it's definitely possible. You can make user interfaces using Python. So like websites, or just like the interface of things, the things that you see on a computer. You can work with blockchain, with crypto and all that, and just in general, it's a good tool for programming interviews. So there's this site, for example, HackerRank. I'm not sure that you know about HackerRank, but usually what happens is that when you train yourself, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but when you train yourself to become a Python developer, There's the part where you actually code, you do like projects, you build stuff, you learn about the programming language and the associated technologies. But there's also one part where you have to prepare for the interview, and the interview process for programmers is a little bit different from what it would be like if you were to, I don't know, work in sales, for example, or marketing. With coding interviews, typically they're going to give you programming problems. Like for example, I'm not really going to give you an example. It's too hard. Just go on hackerrank.com. It's free. You can find out, you can find a lot of, programming problems, and you can solve them with Python. So a lot of companies, if you have like coding problems they're going to give you, you can solve those problems using Python. And this is an advantage because if you had to solve them using, say, JavaScript or PHP, totally possible, but there's just more things that you need to be careful of because it's not designed as well as Python. Python is just easier to learn. It's pretty consistent. All right, now let me talk about how to learn Python, and this is really where most people fail. The first thing that you should keep in mind is stop looking around for resources. Just get like an all-in-one sort of program that covers everything that you need to know in order to get a job as a junior Python developer. A lot of people, they just go on YouTube and look for, I don't know, like Python course, for example. Let me look for this, and I'm sure there are a lot of options that I actually took a look at. There's Harvard. There is, obviously Free Code Camp. A lot of free stuff. That's not bad. That's not bad at all, actually. It's multiple hours, but when you're a Python developer, it's not just about the Python programming language. You're going to need to learn a framework. I'll talk about that in a second. Your second option that you have is Udemy. I would say that's a little bit better because usually the courses are more comprehensive and it's not expensive at all. It's like depends. There are always discounts, so it's like $10 to $20 depending on the discount that you're gonna have. So all these courses here, this one's pretty good. Complete Python Developer from Zero to Mastery. I'm not going to talk about all the programs that I recommend. I'm just going to put links in the description box of this video if you want to check out my recommended programs. I just want to be totally transparent with you. Some of those links are going to be affiliate links. So if you do end up, purchasing some of those programs, I do receive a small commission for some of them, but I wouldn't recommend them if I didn't really like those programs. But again, with those programs, you need to be careful of just, a lot of them it's going to be video content, and you need to be very careful not to just like watch the videos and, it's not like a lecture. You can only learn to become a Python programmer by building stuff and solving problems with the Python programming language. So you need to do stuff that you will do on the job. So like, projects and stuff like that. So you need to get a program, like a Python course that is focused more, at least 75% or at least 50% of the time that you're going to spend, it's going to be spent on actually doing coding exercises and coding projects. And that's the most important, to really practice what you're going to do on the job. Most people who are going to get in the tech industry as Python developers are going to become Python web developers. So that is, they're going to use the Python programming language to make web applications. So like software that runs on the web. And I try to, the reason why I'm talking about this is because, with Python you can do a lot of things. So for example, in this program here, it says that it's very complete, and it is true that it is very complete, but a lot of what it does is teach you about, here, I see a lot of like data science stuff, building games and all that, and that's all good and fine. But keep in mind that most Python developer jobs are going to be for Python web development. So if you can get a program that is focused on Python web development, developing, software for the web using Python, you definitely have an advantage over people who just learn, about like general Python knowledge, like building games and data science and machine learning and a little bit of web development. Focus on the web development side of things unless you have an interest in like the other fields. But my advice would be, focus on web development. There are tons of opportunities in Python web development. If you choose to focus on Python web development, you're going to need to use a framework. So, Python is a programming language, but usually what happens is that if you want to build software using Python, there are tools around Python that are going to help you to, build that software easily. It's not just Python. And so those tools are built using Python, and you're going to use those tools to make software that runs on the web, to do web development. And so in this case, if you choose to do web development with Python, there are only 3 options that I would consider viable if you're really looking in terms of like, having the most opportunities possible, the most job opportunities that are fairly lucrative. The first option is Django. So I'm just going to look here on Indeed and take a look at the Django. This is in the United States, and you have 1,241 jobs for Django developers. So Django is a framework that uses Django Python. I'm just going to show you the website. It's a web framework that uses Python, so you should learn that, right? And this is the best option for most people. Most Python jobs that require the knowledge of a framework are going to use Django. So that is to say that if you're going to get into Python development, you should probably get into Python web development because this is where there are the most opportunities, and you should get into Django web development because this is where there are the most opportunities, and this is the most popular framework for Python developers, bar none. I mean, that's it. So unless you have a very specific reason not to choose Django, then I would choose that one, and it's pretty good. It's pretty simple to learn. It's very well designed. Now, the second option is going to be Flask, and this is a less popular option, but still it's kind of popular. So Flask, you can see here, backend engineer using Python. There are 506 jobs, so it's already less than half compared with Django. Excuse me. And if I look at Flask, Python. You're going to see here the site of the project here. This is also a framework that uses Python. You can build web applications using Flask, and it's pretty good. It's a lot less. It's much more bare bone compared with Django. But again, if you don't have any specific reason for choosing Flask, just choose Django. And then the last option here, and it's still pretty popular, but I wouldn't really recommend it unless there's a very specific reason for you to choose that. It's Fast API. This is the last framework that is somewhat popular, 247 jobs. And it's a fairly new framework. Let me take a look. Yeah, Fast API. You can make web applications. It's specifically APIs. You probably don't know what it is, but that's fine. You're going to find out in whatever program you're going to enroll in. Fast API is becoming more and more popular. As a matter of fact, on GitHub, it's like super popular. It has 66K stars. I'm wondering, like, with Django, how many stars it has. I think it probably has less than that. Let me take a look at GitHub. Django, so 66K versus, no, it has a little bit more, but Fast API is a lot more recent, and it's really growing exponentially. So those are the 3 frameworks that you should choose from: Django, Flask, Fast API. Unless you have like a very specific reason for choosing Flask or Fast API, then just choose Django. It's a pretty safe bet. This is not to say that every single Python developer job is going to use, Django. Some Python developer jobs do not use frameworks because, they use their own like in-house framework or that type of stuff. Usually, the companies, when they don't use a framework, in my experience, there's not really a good reason for not using a framework. But anyways, that's a topic for another video. So if you don't need a framework at your job, it's cool because by learning Django, you actually learn much more than just the framework itself. You learn how to work with Python code, and Django is organized in such a way that is sort of, pretty standard for Python code. So you're going to learn a bunch of, architecture and design principles that are going to be useful for your job, even if you don't, use Django in the future. All right, now let me talk about how to become really good at Python development, because this is, the better you are at Python development, the more money you can ask for at your job, and you can also choose your employer and so on. So the question really is, how do you practice coding in general? There's no the answer I'm going to give is not specific to like Python development, but the answer here, as someone who's trying to get into the tech field, is you need to become good at solving problems with Python, which is, the job of a Python developer is to solve problems using the Python programming language. So your options here are, you can go on HackerRank, and this is my recommended solution here. It's free, so that's pretty great. You go on HackerRank, they have a bunch of, programming problems using Python. Solve, one of those a day, and this is how you become better at Python. You have also another option here, but this is actually a paid option. It's not very expensive. There's a lifetime plan. It's Algo Expert. It's, programming problems. The interface is a little bit better than HackerRank. You solve those programming problems using the Python programming language, and it's actually pretty great. Let me take a look at the pricing page. There you go, Algo Expert. You don't need that package, $99, and it's a 1-year access. More than enough time for you to do all of the problems on the platform. And then you have the super popular LeetCode option. LeetCode is the same thing as Algo Expert. You have a bunch of programming problems that you can solve. This is less expensive in a way. I mean, you pay like monthly. It's $35, so it depends on how you're going to organize yourself. The difference with LeetCode and Algo Expert is that you're going to have a lot more problems on LeetCode. That's basically it. But honestly, if you don't want to spend any money, then just go on HackerRank. It's free. I've done it myself. It's really good quality. So I mean, the only reason why I would choose Algo Expert is because they have video explanations of like the solutions to the problems, whereas with HackerRank, you're not going to have like video solutions. It's just going to be text. So that's one thing to consider. All of those websites are going to have programming problems, and when you type your code in, you can check your solution, and there are automated checks that are going to check your code and check if it's actually working. And there are different levels of difficulty, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And yeah, just solve one problem a day, and this is how you become better at Python. All right, now I'm going to talk about the last thing here, which is preparing for coding interviews, as a Python developer. So if you have actually done the problems, one coding problem a day on HackerRank, Algo Expert, or LeetCode, you should be well prepared for coding interviews as a Python developer, because those websites are essentially designed not necessarily with the idea of making you a better Python developer, although that's a nice side effect. The goal of those websites is to prepare you for coding interviews. the ultimate resource to prepare for coding interviews. It's written here. So that's one thing, because you're going to have most likely, coding problems at your interview. The second thing I would say is that whatever program that you enroll in, then you should definitely include links to your GitHub profile. And if you don't know what GitHub is, it's like a website for storing code. And so you're going to store your code there, and when you have an employer looking to hire you, you just send that link and you say, well, here's my GitHub profile. And so you should also build a portfolio of projects that you have built during the program. And again, I'm going to put some links in the description for my recommended programs for becoming a Python developer. Also, in terms of expectations, you should not expect to just take one interview and then get the job. You're going to have to schedule multiple interviews. Chances are, dozens of interviews probably. But the good thing is that you get better at them, and you only to get a yes once. So even if you get like 20 no's, we're not going to hire you. You only need one yes. So that's the thing. Don't lose hope. You should also prepare for like the behavioral part of like the interviews. And there's a good book on this. I'm going to paste the link here on Amazon. It's called Cracking the Behavioral Interviews for Software Engineers. So the coding interview, you can prepare using LeetCode, HackerRank, AlgoExpert, that kind of thing. But they're also going to ask you behavioral questions. So stuff like, how do you, if you're confronted with a super hard technical problem, then what are the steps that you would use to actually solve it? Or, there's a conflict in your team between two developers, what do you do to solve this? Or, that type of stuff. I would, just prepare for it. Read the book, memorize the answers. Just remember the answers, and everything should, because the questions are always the same. So this book pretty much covers all the standard questions that you may get. So also don't be scared of other job applicants who have degrees, like university degrees in computer science. I personally have a master's degree in computer science, and I coming in with my first job, I didn't have really the specialized and targeted knowledge that you can actually develop using the online programs, whatever online programs and online course about Python web development that you're going to attend. If you do those programs, your knowledge will be much more specialized and much more practical, as opposed to just some computer science graduate who has general knowledge of programming. All right, so that's basically it. Again, take a look in the description for my recommended all-in-one programs for this is going to be Python web development. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.